Keebler elf, Christo-fascist, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is pissing his pants scared right now. Did you see what he said yesterday in a press conference? Okay, so I actually think it's really important to watch his whole almost 7-minute long crash out in this press conference, but I'm going to break it up and talk about it in segments. But really, you should go search it up on C-SPAN and watch the whole thing straight through, because it is, you're just watching him decompensate. You're watching him on the cusp of a panic attack for 7 straight minutes.
There's a small number of times in the history of America where the actual experiment in self-governance was on the ballot. The idea that we would preserve a constitutional republic, one nation under God, a government of, by, and for the people, all that is in question right now. For the first time, really, in my lifetime, this is a real question the American people have to decide in November, in a midterm election for Congress and Senate.
Well, if that isn't pure projection, of course, the future of our democratic republic is on the ballot in November, because Mike Johnson and Donald Trump are trying to dismantle democracy. They're trying to end the experiment in self-governance and institute a totalitarian Christo-fascist government in the United States.
It's not something that we would have projected. I hoped and prayed it would never come to this, but here we are.
Yeah, I'm sure you did hope and pray that you would be further along in your fascist takeover of the United States. I'm sure you were hoping Donald Trump would have been more successful in trying to dismantle democracy by this point in time so that you could institute your fringe far-right theocracy. Sorry that's not working out so well for you.
The barbarians are in the gate.
The barbarians are in the gate. We all understand that that's an Islamophobic dog whistle, right? We understand what Mike Johnson is doing there. And then he goes on to wax nostalgic about the McCarthy-era and about the fact that In God We Trust was added in 1962. Yeah, so that's not from the founding of our country. That is conservative politicians exploiting a fear of communism. Now, again, I'm not a fan of authoritarian communism at all. I'm a fan of having agency, self-direction. I'm a fan of communal societies. I'm a fan of our tax dollars going to provide necessary services for us rather than corporate welfare for billionaires and corporations and the government of Israel.
Last night I did a little... had a big group actually of VIPs that took on a tour. I don't get to do that very often anymore, but took a tour of the Capitol, a quick one. We wound up on the House floor, and I pointed to them, as you may have heard me reference this often. I think of it a lot. Why did Congress put In God We Trust above the rostrum of the Speaker's podium there in the center of the House? It's inscribed in the marble, as you know. You can't miss it when you walk in the chamber. It's the first thing people notice when they walk in at eye level and see it there. And I pointed out that in the visitor's guide to the House, it explains that. It says it was put there in 1962, and it says in the visitor's guide, it's been published for many years, it said Congress voted to place that there as a rebuke to the Soviets because of their philosophy during the Cold War. What was the philosophy of the Soviets? It's what Carlos just outlined, same philosophy of Cuba. The brutal dictatorship there that robbed him of his childhood, and so many countless others. They've lost their lives trying to flee from that brutal dictatorship.
Like, I'm not down with Stalin, and I don't really think that any of the DSA or progressive candidates on the ballot for November are either. And let's keep in mind that a majority of candidates on the ballot from the Democratic Party are like kind of middle of the road, and the Democratic Party is not a left-wing party. It's not a communist party. The fact that Mike Johnson is having to lean so heavily into this rhetoric, trying to whip up a second McCarthy era, trying to whip up a Red Scare at this moment in time, the fact that he and Donald Trump have decided that their effective talking point that's going to scare people into keeping a fascist government in power is the threat of a Red Scare. The threat of communism. They keep dropping the word communism over and over and over again. Like, that is going to save them. To me, it's just such an extreme, desperate attempt. Because, like, obviously there aren't any communists on the ballot in major races anywhere in the country this fall.
The philosophy of the Soviets during the Cold War was Marxism, communism, socialism. That's the thing. And when Congress voted in 1962 to put that there, it was right after your childhood in the late 50s when the Castro took over and destroyed Cuba. It was a completely foreseeable result. We were fighting it during the Cold War on distant shores in the USSR. And Congress was resolute on that. They were all united, and they understood that that's not who we are as Americans. The reason we are the greatest nation in the history of the world, the most free, most successful, most powerful, most benevolent, you hear me say it all the time, the reason that we are the greatest nation is because we were built on an entirely different and opposing set of values. Congress put in God We Trust above the rostrum because they wanted to remind everybody who would ever serve in this body in Congress that there is a huge distinction between us and the Soviets' philosophy. Communism, Marxism, socialism, all this begins with the premise that there is no God. It's a totally different philosophy. In our declaration that we just celebrated, 250 years on July 4th, the nation's creed, as you hear me talk about all the time, the second paragraph, we hold these truths to be self-evident and all men are created equal. Our rights come from our Creator, God. They do not come from the government. The communists believe the opposite. They believe that the government is, the state is God. The state is the one that gives you all your rights. And you know what? The state can also take those rights away. And that's exactly what happens. It's inevitable.
And we all know that for decades, the Rush Limbaughs, the right-wing talk radio, the Republican Party has conflated socialism and communism and has taught their base that that means like oppressive Stalin-era USSR policies. And yeah, okay, sure, yes, we know that Mao killed tens of millions of people. How many people has the American military-industrial complex killed? How many people has Donald Trump killed since he came back into office? How many people has Elon Musk killed since Donald Trump let him rampage through our government? An unelected billionaire was given unfettered access to cause tremendous harm and to snuff out how many lives?
Communism and this philosophy has led to the murder of tens of millions of innocent people in the 20th century alone. It is a nightmare. It is a trail to certain death, okay? And that's why we're speaking in such stark terms, because we need America to wake up. We're not even, look, 35 years ago, Republicans and Democrats in Congress, when I was coming up in, the Reagan years, they were fighting communism on a distant shore. Now it's here. But in Congress, they all agreed on that. They obviously knew that we had to fight communism. And so what they were doing here for domestic policy, that was foreign policy. Domestic policy, they were arguing over, marginal tax rates and the shades of regulation and how large the government should be. There wasn't a huge difference, a chasm between the two parties. Those days are gone. Right now, domestically, we are arguing, we are debating, we are fighting. The election will be over whether we're going to maintain our freedom in a constitutional republic, the greatest experiment in self-governance in the history of the world, the longest surviving constitution on the planet, the nation that everybody wants to emulate and everybody wants to come here. We have to seal our borders so they won't flood over them. We're the only nation in the world that has that distinction. We're the last great superpower. We are the greatest nation in the history of the world. We are.
Holy shit, he is so scared of the midterms. He is really afraid of the American people. He's really, really afraid of democracy. The Republicans are a fascist party. They are a party of undemocracy. And Mike Johnson has really led the charge on that, right? I know I have said before, he's like a little male anglerfish who fuses himself to the big fat bloated female anglerfish, right? That's Mike Johnson on Donald Trump's ass. He has been willing to do anything that Donald Trump wants, and he's been pushing the Republican Party farther and farther and farther to the right. When Kevin McCarthy was ousted as Speaker of the House, I was like, that's not a good thing, you guys. That's not a good thing, because he was replaced with an ideologue, Mike Johnson, who firmly believes that Donald Trump is God's anointed, and through Donald Trump, through loyalty to Donald Trump, Mike Johnson will succeed in turning the United States into a far right-wing extremist theocracy. That's his goal. That's his hope. That's what he's pinned everything on. As I said in my video yesterday about Donald Trump, it's all chips in. It's all chips in on subverting the midterms. There is nothing that the Republicans have left. They have decided that they are fully in on Donald Trump's fascist plan, and they've got to see it through. There's nothing left for them to do but to escalate rhetoric around the midterms. There's nothing left for them to do but to try to subvert the midterms, to violate the law, to steal the midterm elections, because if the people are allowed to vote, then we're going to vote these Christo-fascist fuckers out. And so we can't have free and fair democracy in this country and have the Republicans in charge. The people are going to express our will at the ballot box, and Mike Johnson is terrified of it. That's why he's making this speech. He's hoping to whip up his base. He and Donald Trump are hoping to create this pretext to do a Red Scare, to arrest and imprison their political adversaries, people who speak out against the regime. This is what the memorandum that went out earlier this year was about, making it thought crimes, wanting to put people in prison if they espouse anti-capitalist or anti-Christian sentiment.
Fighting right now in Congress over whether we're going to maintain our status as a constitutional republic, or we're going to trade that in, dismantle the foundations, and go down this dark road of death to communism. That is the question on the ballot this fall. Now, DSA published their platform. I hope you're all covering. Oh, I hope you're writing in depth about their platform. I read it out at an event a few weeks ago, and they made an ad mocking me reading their platform. Now, they didn't put the clips with the worst parts of it. Representative Jimenez just told you, Carlos told you that, well, of course they want to pack the Supreme Court, and they want a unicameral legislature. They want the House to run everything, abolish the Senate, because they believe the House would be run by Marxists, communists. They'll be able to run the table on everything. They want to remove the president. What they also want to do is abolish all borders. They don't want any borders. They want mass amnesty granted to anyone who can come onto our shores without exception, even for terrorists and hardened dangerous criminals. Okay? They don't want prisons. It's in their platform. They want to remove the carceral state, they said. No prisons. They don't want to fund the police. This is not a game. Everybody needs to understand. These crazy little mini Mamdanis who are popping up all around the country, they are a danger to you and your family. This is not a game. If they promise you free stuff, there is far more beneath those promises that even some of these people do not understand themselves. And so we are here as the Republican Party to stand on the founding principles of the greatest nation in the history of the world. It is our duty to do that. And we're doing it on behalf of all of you, even the journalists who don't agree with our policies all the time. You better agree on these principles, because it's what keeps you free. By the way, it's what keeps the press free, okay? This is essential for your well-being and your family. This is not a game. This is not our father's Democrat Party. We're not arguing over marginal tax rates anymore. We're arguing over whether or not freedom is going to survive. And that's why we're so serious about this. Look, I'm a happy warrior, man. I like to get up and have fun, but this is not a fun time. We're in a war. We're in a philosophical war to save the greatest nation in the history of the world. And we take it very...
When I tell you that Mike Johnson is all in on this fascist agenda, what I mean is that there is nothing that he won't do. There's no law that he won't break. I firmly believe if he had his way, he would arrest everybody in the Democratic Party and put them in prison or put them in a gulag, put them in one of Stephen Miller's concentration camps. What he wants is complete and total control. And the more these men who have an obsessive need for control, an obsessive need to shape American culture rather than letting the American people shape our culture, right? He wants to tell everybody, you have to ascribe to my version of Christianity. His version of Christianity, where, by the way, he and his minor son would be accountability partners. Like, he would confess to his minor child about the times that he would choke the chicken and like watched porn or whatever. That's who Mike Johnson is. He thinks that's a healthy relationship with your child. It's such a warped and twisted worldview, and he wants to force everybody to take up his religion and to behave in a way that he wants you to behave. He doesn't want freedom. He doesn't want a democratic republic. He wants a fascist state. And so when you hear him talking about, I mean, I know we all know this, but when you hear him talking about how scared he is of the people electing progressives, electing folks who want universal health care, who want to overturn Citizens United, who don't want hundreds of billions and billions of our taxpayer dollars going to fund a genocide in the Middle East. He doesn't want the people to express their will. He doesn't want the people to have self-determination. He wants to force Christo-fascism on all of us. And he sees it all crumbling. He sees it all falling apart, slipping through his fingers. And he has such a high need for control that he will continue to escalate. The rhetoric will get more violent. The rhetoric will get more extreme. It will be more ridiculous. It will be more ridiculous, but it will be no less dangerous because they have nothing left to lose. If they lose in the midterms, it's all over for them. It's all over for them. So they have put all of their chips on the table for subverting the midterms, for destroying democracy, for completing their coup in November of 2026. Please be aware. Please be aware of the fact that Mike Johnson will do anything and everything. This level of panic that you're seeing from him right now is an indication of how he is willing to go to all extremes. I'm not saying, no, you know what? I am saying it's like a doomsday cult, because it is. These guys are in a doomsday cult. They think that they are forcing the second coming of Jesus. They think that they are bringing about the apocalypse through this plan. These men are unhinged, they are extreme, and they're fully committed. And so we should expect things to get much worse. We should expect the kind of lies, the kind of rhetoric to escalate, and we should expect the measures that they take to become more extreme, because they've got nothing left. They've got no other option. And so even though they seem like they're operating from a position of strength, they seem like they're operating from a position of intimidation, watch Mike Johnson again, look at his face. He is scared shitless. He knows that it's falling apart. And so he's going to do everything. Again, it is like when you are trying to get ready to leave your abusive partner and they know that it's all falling apart. They know that they're losing their grip on you. That is when you are most in danger. America is most in danger right now. Between now and January of next year, we are in danger from Mike Johnson, from Donald Trump, from Stephen Miller, from Steve Bannon. Because if they don't succeed in their coup in November, it's all over for them. It's all over for them. Mike Johnson won't see the temple rebuilt. He won't bring about the apocalypse. Steve Bannon will go to prison. A lot of people will go to prison. They will not succeed in dismantling democracy, and that is their greatest hope. They are 100% committed to that cause, and we need to be aware of how things are going to escalate, and we better have our plan ready. What's our plan? Get ready, y'all, because folks in a doomsday cult like Mike Johnson, they don't suddenly become reasonable, sensible, truth-telling people. There's a logical progression here, and we need to understand the dynamic that is at play. We need to understand how their sheer desperation is making them incredibly, incredibly dangerous. And then we have to be organizing in earnest to defend ourselves and democracy.